Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon Live. Especially them because you don't know how it's going to turn out.
My kids empowered me to get out.
What's going on with this remote learning and in the midst of COVID?
Working for different elected officials, learning and understanding how to put the community first.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hello there, ladies.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Oh my God, I am so excited about the show tonight because we have a special guest joining us. We've been waiting for him to come on for at least 2-3 weeks now, and we finally got him on, and we can't wait to talk to him. So we want to introduce him now to bring him on.
Absolutely. Our special guest tonight is Mr. Frederick K. Brewington. He is the principal of the law offices of Frederick K. Brewington in Hempstead, New York. He is admitted to the bars of the states of New York and New Jersey, as well as the United States Supreme Courts, United States First and Second Circular Courts of Appeals, the United States District Courts of New Jersey, and the Eastern, Southern, and Northern Districts of New York. He challenges discriminatory practices with a sustained focus on issues such as affordable housing, community revitalization, employment and civil rights, the environment, and especially voting rights and fair representation in government. He is an adjunct professor at Jacob D. Fuchsberg Law School, Law Center at Touro College, and has had numerous articles published in the National Bar Association magazine, the Amsterdam News, Black Westchester, and the Amistad Long Island Black Bar Association's newsletter. Let's welcome Mr. Brewington to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
Shannon got it up
because we got a lot to talk about. Because I got a lot of questions to ask.
Shannon got it going on.
So let's just start with, with all this stuff going on with, our new leader at hand. It seems like every time something happens, it always affects, our people and the people who don't have as much as the other ones. I say it always affects us more than it do the others. What do you feel is going on with all this crisis now, and how do you feel it's going to affect the African American people?
Well, I think it's important for us to realize that we start at a deficit from a societal standpoint of 450 to nearly 500 years of degradation and deprivation. We came here as unwilling immigrants. We came here under the auspices of being free labor. So when we start with that, we start with a reality that it's never been fair. It's never been equitable for persons of color, particularly African Americans in America. So that's part of the problem. And we need to understand that America has never remedied that, never dealt with that, and even to today does not want to deal with that. When we talk about the demise of DEI and affirmative action, how can you remedy 500 years of degradation in over just 50, 60 years where you're trying to level the playing field? That's not happening. So that's the impact of today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So another thing too that I feel is that we always keep talking about the same thing over and over and over again. And every time a new administration come in, we talk about the same stuff over and over again, what we supposed to do and how we supposed to stick together with each other. But I know you talked about earlier about people not being educated to what's happening, but when are we going to get educated? When are we going to ever get educated? Because it seems like we just keep talking about the same stuff. Oh, and I'm not saying that we haven't progressed because we have come a long ways, but it's like we can't get to where we need to get to.
The insistence that America get on the right page has to be part of our clarion call, right? We have to require that not just in our community, because we have a lot of educating to do in our community, but we've got to take back which is rightfully ours, which is a level of leadership, and require America to come face to face with some certain realities, that we are an extremely discriminatory and racist society, that we were based on that, we were built on that. that we have a failure to address the issues that deal with disparity in housing, disparity in education, disparities in economics, disparities in a number of areas. And when we don't address those from community to community, we start to breed the very things that pull us backwards, because it's tough to figure out what you need civil rights wise when you have to work 3 jobs. It's tough when you have half of your male population filling up 75 to 80% of the jails. So the requirement, and we have to then talk about why that is, and make the society sometimes grab them by the grill and make them understand that this is a conversation and a reality that has to be addressed, not just Black folks, not just brown folks, but white folks in America have to realize that this was a debacle that they created and that now needs to be changed.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to add into that. As we know, there's a lot of institutional racism, right? The systemic racism. And these are systems working how they've been designed to work. But how do we get our people of color to get to the mindset of not being 95% consumers, where even today there's not even an interest in building wealth or leaving a legacy? And if we even get to that era of trying to at least build wealth and create wealth, are we at a risk of another Tulsa, another massacre?
Well, I mean, Tulsa and Black Wall Street, I think, is really important for us to understand. But most of the folks in our communities don't know about Tulsa. They don't know about Black Wall Street. They don't have that as part of their mindset. So that's part of the education. But to go to your point even a little stronger, one of the things that we really need to do in looking at all this is understand that we have to teach our young people about how to manage wealth early on, about how to accumulate wealth early on, and how to make money turn into old money. And that money then becomes part of who we are, that being from a societal standpoint, teaching about what the economics are. We oftentimes say we're so deprived economically, we can't talk about it. That's not true. We can educate ourselves and make sure that by the time someone is 12 years old, they not only know how to manage a checkbook, but they also know how to manage a portfolio. And that's something we can do because we teach our students and our young people all types of things. Why can't they learn financial management early on and understanding the value of the finances, the economic system that is so viciously against them?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about also the changes with the new civil rights law and fair housing. I mean, because a lot of times, people in our communities won't think that things are going to affect them until it does. And so they need to really understand, what does this mean when there's workplace discrimination, there's housing discrimination? How are these new laws are going to affect us?
Well, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were put in place so that we had some ability to try and push back against what was going on in society. We know constitutionally things we just say that's wrong. But the reality is that it took Congress to say that we need to codify laws that will help to fight against those things which are discriminatory institutionally and in a number of ways. So part of what we have to do is to, one, equip people to be able to take on that fight, but let them know that they don't have to be victims. Being a victim is a very tough thing, and it also is demeaning and demoralizing. But when we give people the energy, the ability, and the strength to say, I won't be a victim, and I have information and know my rights, we can then seek out the information. Myself as a civil rights lawyer, see that every day. People are impacted, but don't know how to address how they're impacted until they have that knowledge. And that becomes part of education, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit.
And that's another thing, Mr. Brewington, that really annoys me is the voting. That when people don't go and vote or say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for them because they're not going to do anything anyway. I'm not going to vote for them for, this and that. Like, don't you get it that when you don't go vote, it's just, it affects the other person as well? Because just like if you don't go and vote, that was a vote for Trump right away. And that Do you remember the movie Selma? Do you ever look at the movie Selma to see people dying on the bridge because they wanted to vote? And here you talking this nonsense about you not going to vote, but you want to have rights for everything, but then you don't want to do what you're supposed to do when the time comes. You don't understand why your community does not get all the resources they're supposed to get. It's because your community don't come out and vote.
Mm-hmm. Sister Shannon, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head, right? But part of the thing is, when we look at a movie like Selma, many people look at it as entertainment. They don't look at it from a historical perspective. And that makes that's part of what we have a responsibility to do. That when we look at a historical reenactment of what we have gone through, that it's not just seen as entertainment or something that we can blow off in the next half hour. It's got to be internalized, and that becomes part of the educational process that we have a responsibility to for our communities, both young and old, so that we understand what those lessons mean. A lot of folks today, particularly some of our younger folks, don't understand what it took in order for them to have exactly what they have today and what sacrifices took place in order for that to take place. And if we don't teach that, if we don't become the griots under the banyan tree, if we are not the people teaching those lessons on a regular basis so that they not just see it as entertainment, but internalize it, that then becomes part of our responsibility. And we have to train other people as well.
But it's always, I understand where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right, because every time it's time to put someone in office, we keep talking about the same thing over and over every 4 years or every 2 years when it's time to vote to put someone in office. I mean, how much training do we need to tell them when you keep saying you need to get out and get to the polls? This is a constantly thing going even before the elections and things start. But I just don't get it. Like, why are you complaining all the time when you don't want to do what you're supposed to do?
I think what I hear a lot of times is that it doesn't matter, because what they see is the politicians will say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, watch and see, and then they don't see any changes. And it's like, well, what's the point in voting then? Because everyone says they're going to do something, but nothing ever happens.
But you know what? We need to hold the constituents accountable, right? Why do we only get the information during voting? What happens in the years in between each voting process? Right? Why do we have to learn overnight about a candidate that's running for something? I want to know what's going on throughout the year, throughout the community, throughout the month, the day by day, processes. Why do I have to wait till when it's voting? And nobody wants to.
Okay, then hold that thought, Mr. Brewington. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. We'll be back.
Hello, this is Marshall Cuellar, and you're watching Keeping It Real with Shannon.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
We're back talking to our guest today, Mr. Frederick Brewington, and a civil rights lawyer. And as before we went to break, Mr. Brewington, Vanessa was telling you about the voting and stuff, which also, Vanessa, before he responds to you, what you were saying, yes, but we say this every year. So why do we have to just keep repeating it every year? It's the same thing every year. You're telling the people what to do. So now it's time for you to do it.
Well, the thing I was going to say is that telling people what to do and them fully understanding it are two different things. And part of what we have gotten away from, I don't know, it's the older folks that may be listening and watching may remember that there was a time when we had a class called citizenship. And we understood what the intricacies were of government, how it interacted, how money came into the communities. If you were to ask most people in the community, particularly the communities of color, how government actually works, how it interacts, where money comes, what CDBG funds are, what home funds are. Most folks will have no idea and not understand that the money comes into communities through federal and state dollars for the use and programs that they need to have prepared for them. So as a result of that, one of the things that we need to do is make sure that that happens. And we can do that. We don't have to wait for somebody to do that. We can have training sessions like that in the basement of the church every Sunday and make sure that 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds are fully trained in the electoral process and the impacts that impact our community. But it does take our leaders to buy into that. And as a community, that's our responsibility to do that type of education.
So are you saying that you feel that we should concentrate more on the younger set once they get old enough to vote, like 19, 20, to educate them and get them out there voting? Because I mean, I know things can happen, because the first time I seen it happen was when President Obama was running for president. And that's the first time I ever seen all of us come together and mobilize and got to those polls, because I had never been to the polls before. The line was all the way around the building and you waited in line for 2 and 3 hours, but the people stayed there and waited patiently and voted. People picked up seniors. It was like I had never seen this happen before. That's why I know we can do something when we want to do something.
You're absolutely right. We can. But in terms, we lost our head of steam. Part of that is that we have to maintain a certain level of vigilance. That there was hope and I know I'm not the only one. When Obama first got elected that night, I cried.
I did too. That's
a lot
right.
of people cried, All right, that's so right. That's real. Yeah, it was ugly. But the realities is that we need to internalize that, because there are people who are younger than myself and other people that may be listening and watching who don't know and didn't experience that because they didn't understand the import of that election. It was a Black man being elected, yes, but it was the first time in our country's a lesson being taught to our country that we could at some point achieve the highest office. And then putting him in with a Congress that was shutting him down left and right, and he still maintained his dignity.
Right.
Understanding that is a historical reality that we have to talk about.
But do you find that the younger generation, I have to say my generation, even younger, are not really understanding the importance of voting? I think that's where it's coming from too. It's like no one is really pushing them, telling them you must vote. These are the things that could be accomplished. They're living in a bubble, some type of non-reality here.
Well, the non-reality is what difference do I make, and what difference does my vote make, and not understanding that. And Sister Shannon, I think that you're absolutely right. That in that situation, we do need to make sure that our younger folks, younger voters, understand the intricacies of government and bureaucracy. If we don't understand that and how our country operates, we are at a loss, because that's trained into other communities. There's no reason we can't train our own communities.
And that's interesting, because we speak about the youth, right? So now youth feel that they don't have a voice, but it's good to bring youth into the political setting, the arena, to have a voice at the table, because their opinions matter, their situations matter, they matter. So when you don't have voice at the table, that's why they feel they doesn't matter. And why did their voice, why does their vote work? In that sense. But the whole caveat of this thing is also is not to wait just for an election period. I would like to know what's going on, like during the day-to-day, intricacies that you mentioned in the community. Why does it have to be that we don't know what's going on down the block, around the corner, or why is it important for communities and the neighbors to sign a petition to get something done? They don't see the power within themselves. So what do we do about that to bring more youth into the political arena, so they can understand some of these things that they can carry and teach other youth?
Well, you hit two important points. The first thing is democracy is a participation sport, right? I mean, you've got to understand its impact on you and your impact on it. And in order to affect the change, you've got to participate in the process, and we have to encourage folks to participate in the process, which is hard work, right? Organizing in the community is hard work. But the other thing is that you're right. We have to hold people that are elected accountable and give the power. As we used to say back in the 60s and 70s, power to the people. We need to give the power back to the people and call elected officials into accountability. When Congresswoman Gillen voted to censure Al Green from Texas as one of 10 Democrats, all white Democrats that wanted to censure Al Green for standing up during the president's State of the Union speech, we called her into account. We called her into a room filled with black and brown folks who put her in her seat and said, you made a mistake. You did something wrong. And we made her understand that. And she left very much understanding that we put her there. And in that situation, her tenure in Congress could be one term if she didn't try and understand that she represented a community that went blue so that she could be in Congress.
Absolutely.
Well, is this the man that did? This the one you talking about that disrupted President Obama when he was speaking that night?
No, this is the gentleman, Al Green, during the president. I don't want to say his name. During Agent Orange's.
Okay.
That stood up and said that you're lying, which he was.
Right.
And then did what every politician that wanted our vote said, that we're in a fight for our democracy. He stood up and fought. And then he was censured by a woman that was elected to Congress on the backs of black and brown people. And that was something that we immediately called her into. She came into a room right down the hall from my office, here in my office. It was packed. It was a standing room only. And we told her how we felt betrayed by her actions to censure a black man who stood up, a senior member of Congress, stood up and dared to say that I'm going to stand up like and get into good trouble. Good trouble's got a meaning, and we need to also teach that.
Yeah, because I was very upset when Obama was giving him speech and that other guy stood up that night and disrupted him, and he wasn't put out. And I'm like, why did the president have him put out? You can have him put out. Why did you let him stay there?
But see, the difference is that at that time, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have been put out, but I say the difference at that time was that President Obama was not wreaking havoc and was not raping and pillaging the country the same way that the current president is. It's a difference. And it was an attack. It's an attack, a whole hog attack. That's down from home, right? Whole hog attack on people in the black community who built this country. And at this point, he wants to erase from the face of history.
It's
now,
interesting.
How do you feel like with all of this going on? Do you think the Democrats are doing enough? Because I'm like kind of tired now because I'm not hearing enough, even for my people in New York. I think I need to hear a little more for them, making some noise about what this president is doing and what he's getting away with. I mean, like, why does everybody seem to be so quiet? Because
we're quiet. And we're expecting them to say something when we're not calling them into account. The good doctor here on the screen talked about accountability. If you don't say to these elected officials, I need you to stand up on the floor of Congress and state the truth, truth will never be told. And in those halls, those hollowed halls, that is the responsibility, if we want to make sure that we're heard, is to make sure that history does not try to erase us.
Yeah, because I couldn't believe Schumer, the way he voted, I was like really shocked.
Well, but there,
what's happening here?
Sister Shannon, that also requires some conversation, because voting a certain way and who it will impact and won't impact is also important for us to understand, because the pundits will all say, oh, he caved in. But if indeed there is no budget, and if indeed there is no dollars flowing to communities, some mothers may not be able to feed their children. And we need to also understand that sometimes votes have to be taken, which are hard votes. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the conversation. I understand that you're saying that, what his vote was, but that's part of us understanding that sometimes we need to really understand the intricacies, because his vote and his vote no may very well mean the government shuts down and people who need that dollar coming into their bank account can't care for their families.
Yeah.
He had to make a tough decision.
Yeah.
Shut the country down, or hold his political line. Sometimes you got to do that, but also you have to know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Listen, can you stay a few minutes? I got about 2-3 more questions to ask you, and I'll let you go. If you can stay a few minutes, you got a few minutes?
I'm going to stay with you.
Okay. You want to stay with us for our after show. So thank you for joining us tonight. And as always, join us. You can still stay on and you can see the after show with Mr. Brewington. If not, you can always catch us on Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. on Brick Arts Network and Manhattan Network at 2:30 p.m. And you can always come back and look at the show later. So as always, we'll see you next time.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies.
Would you like beautiful pictures for your home or your office? Then stop by Faith Art Gallery. They have a large selection of pictures from around the world.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. Keeping it real.
Thank you for joining us for our after show, because we couldn't let Mr. Brewington go because, it was getting hot and heavy in here, but I had just a couple of more questions that I needed to ask him. Mr. Brewington, I want to, talk about this tariff thing that's going on with him now, because I can see it looks like it may last a while. And if it does, it's really going to hurt us. It's really going to hurt us people that can't afford this extra price when all the food price go out, all the clothing go up. Now he wants to put the tariff on the Hollywood movies that's made, in the United. Is it made in the United States? No,
made out of the United States.
Do you think this is gonna last? Is he gonna be able to keep this tariff thing going? Because the other countries are really not backing down. China's not backing down, and the only reason he took some of the tariffs off the phones and stuff, because I guess he realized he needed a cell phone.
I believe that tariffs, as are being utilized in this way, is an abuse of the governmental authority and the presidential authority. And I think it's being done for a number of reasons. One, it's being done to impact the financial systems in America, so that people that are not going to be impacted by what happens when the Dow Jones and the stock market goes low, that those persons who are not going to be impacted, which take about 1% to 2% of the population, can then purchase in and gain a big boom when they sell high, or they sell, when they actually sell high after coming in, when the stock market allows them to buy in. A lot of folks don't. It's really important in a situation like that to follow the money. And tariffs have an appropriate use if you're trying to create both political and financial realities and stability, but to use them in a vengeful and a unrealistic standpoint will only impact those persons that don't have the safety nets to catch them. And that's why the farmers so immediately responded. A lot of them voted for Agent Orange, and they immediately responded how it impacted them. They didn't see this coming, and he didn't care. But the reality is that a lot of them have drank the Kool-Aid. And as a result of that, we really need to understand that a lot of folks that support Trump are going to support them to the day they die because they're fanatical. They're not realists.
Yeah, but It's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that with the stock market, because as we know, when the tariffs and all the threats and all the distractions that was going on, there's a fear greed meter. And long as it's been a fear for weeks now. But now what that does is that empowers people who are worried, who's concerned, to sell off all their stock. And everybody just there, like you said, that's at the table of money, just there picking it up. Just picking it up. And this is how they're building their wealth and creating wealth. This is all a distraction. We are living in uncharted, uncertain waters. So we know that there's a system going on. We don't really know what it's going to go. There's a big thing going on with the Feds, with the interest rates, the unemployment, all these things. Now you want to hit the economic system with housing. And I know your work is with also advocacy for housing, but then how does those vouchers that may be impacted affect individuals that are being housed and using those subsidized benefits?
One of the things, and Doctor, thank you so much, because one of the things we have to realize is all of this is interconnected. When we look at this isolation by isolation, we say, oh, what's the difference? What's the difference? But we have to understand that these systems and institutions are interconnected. And that's why we need to do the education that we were talking about earlier in the pre-show, in the earlier show, because if we don't understand how economics really work, if we don't understand that what the waves are that happen with regard to economics and how that impacts community to community, we're at a disadvantage, because people do understand that. And you're right, when the stock market goes low and people say, oh, I bet I got to sell because otherwise I'm going to lose my shirt, there are people that don't care about their shirt who are buying it up, and they're going to then benefit in the long run. Elon Musk and all of his friends, what do they care? What do they care if in a day they drop, $5 million, $600 million, when they've got billions to play with, and they know they're going to gain it back on whose back? On the back of folks who can least afford it.
Absolutely.
But that's what he said. He said the orange man said, don't worry, the stock market will go back up. It was almost, his statement almost was like an insider trading kind of thing, because people started questioning, is he really playing a game here? And is this game that he's playing to help his friends get wealthier?
Well, we have to understand one of the basic tenets of finances always is buy low, sell high, right? And if you have that and you build in that, and then we look at the history of the man who's currently sitting at 600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we know that he would come in, he would raid, pillage, bankrupt, and sell. That's what he does. And that, he's been through bankruptcy how many times? I mean, we're dealing with a man that got 34 felony convictions sitting in the White House. So don't think that his approach is going to be any different. People tell you who they are, not based on what they say, but what they do. And if we take a look at that, and that's another reason we need to understand. We talked a little bit about why people voted the way that they did, because folks, took a bite of the forbidden fruit and thought that it was going to be okay. And we know what happens if we remain biblical. We understand that if we don't pay attention to that, we end up poisoning the entire process.
I understand that point, Mr. Brewington, but my thing, I go right back to what I said again. Why are you tasting that fruit when he already told you what he's going to do? So why would you even think that he's going to change what he said he was going to do? This is what I don't get.
Mr. Shannon, because
he's telling you what he's going to do.
I know that, but you're listening. You're listening, and when you listen to some folks that are not giving the information that we need to have, and that are saying things and listening, and you've already got their ear, it's easy to tell folks that they should not vote for this black woman, or it's easy to say that Trump is going to put more money in your pocket. He'll put $1,000 in your pocket and take $5. You'll remember the $1,000 because I went out and I did this and I bought a new tractor with my $1,000. But the reality is that you're worse off than you were when you first started.
But it's not even about I'm confused because he was once upon a time president. So we know who we were dealing with. It's not a secret. We know. And we know when he came back, he was going to come back with a vengeance. Why? I can't understand people's concept of why did they want to vote for him. It's not like we didn't know. We know.
Well, you know what?
Everybody.
No, but I don't really know who to blame, right? Because first of all, if you have someone that's been convicted of 34 felonies, right? Never alone the ones that do 5 months, 6 months probation, parole, they can't even vote. It's able to still run for the highest land of the land. I don't understand why that couldn't put in place that would have prevented him from running. I just don't understand. I understand there's some benefits that people bought into him, and they want the RR, they want the return on the investment, right? So they have to. It just seems like, is everybody playing the same game?
Well, that then requires us to understand our democracy and understand what the Constitution of the United States says about that ability. He may very well not be able to vote in some communities, but it doesn't say he can't run for president. And if he does it while he's in office, one of the things is that he can be impeached. But the impeachment process is not necessarily a removal process. It is a sanctioning process that happens. And the impeachment process, we've had presidents who've been impeached and stayed in office in the past. So knowing all that, if we don't understand, and Doctor, you're absolutely right, we need to be able to raise those questions. But the reality is that you can, as we've seen, run for president and be a convicted felon. But you may not be able to even vote in the state in which you've been convicted. That's why we should understand our Constitution as they intermix with the law. And that's a good lesson. That's a full evening discussion so that people understand, how could that be, right? We scratch our heads. And the reality is we need to talk about that so that people are not asking the question, but understanding it.
Right.
But what can we do? What can be done to have him even impeached? Because, I mean, I find it mind-boggling that he's even questioning whether people should have due process. And so, I mean, that's something that we all should have, and everything should be done by the system. Right. And he's not even following those rules and laws.
And that's exactly why there are lawsuits and other things that are happening. But if Congress doesn't call him into account as the legislative branch, we are then at a loss to have to do with what we're doing, which is across the country. There are literally scores of lawsuits that are appearing before federal judges and some local judges, but federal judges testing what he has done. Had a federal judge that ordered him when he deported a gentleman out of the country and into one of the South American countries, told him that he had to bring him back. And he defied that court order. And that was the signal, not only for the courts, but also for Congress to call him into account. That's why we have checks and balances. And if we understand our Constitution,
they haven't called him into account.
That's my point.
They haven't called him into account.
That's my point. My point is exactly that. And again, I'm glad that you're staying with me on this, because when they're not called into account, the checks and balances fall both to the people and to the judiciary. And that's why we have to bring the lawsuits to make that happen, because Congress is not doing their job. The Senate is not doing their job because they're giving him a platinum card to do whatever the heck he wants to do.
Exactly. And he sat on TV and out of his own mouth and said that he couldn't bring the young man back, that the president from El Salvador had to bring him back. So the president from El Salvador said, I can't send him back until the new United States say for me to send him back, because they're not sending him back because they already paid the $6
million. They getting $5 million. Yeah, they're getting money for him.
Exactly. It's all about money.
So I think everybody's getting money here for what's going on.
No, they say money talks.
Follow the dollars.
Follow
the dollars.
That's what I'm saying, because how can all of this be happening? He is allowed to do pick up people, send them, do what they want to do. It's just like I told my friend, now you better keep your driver license on you or some kind of ID, because they might be picking your little behind up and sending you back to wherever they
go. They're picking up U.S. citizens. And
yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Send letters to them.
Yeah, but how do you say, okay, you're going to start deporting U.S. citizens? Like Really?
Because he was trying to change the law of natural citizenship or something like that. I don't know what goes on in this man's mind.
Naturalization and whether or not you if you were born to U.S. citizens, whether or not you lose your citizenship. I mean, all of those issues are ones that in our society, if we don't test them, that being, if we don't call them out for what they are, put them into the justice system with regard to lawsuits seeking equitable relief, we then fall prey to people doing whatever they want to do, and that's what fascism is, right? Where the rule of law has no import, and that's why it's important for us as a community to understand we can identify the problems and complain about them. The reality is that if we don't call a congresswoman into your place and say, "Don't do that again," and if you do that again, we will take you out. If we don't do that, and we have to feel empowered to do that, we have to take back our power. And that's what we have to start to do, community by community, corner by corner, and house by house.
Well, we're gonna let you go, Mr. Brewington, but I just want to say this, and this what I strongly feel, and I probably won't be around to see if it happened or not or anything. But when he said that he wanted to become a dictator, to me, this is the direction it's going, because he is out of control doing whatever the hell he wants to do. He already know Congress is not going to do anything to stop him. Plus, they put in law. Didn't they write something in law where he would be, immune to whatever he did? In other words, they wasn't going to do anything to him when he do these things. And he said that he wanted to be a dictator anyway. What did he said? Once we all vote for him, we would never have to vote again.
Mm-hmm. Well,
executive is going on, and something is happening under our nose, and we are too busy distracted with tariffs and this thing, and we are not seeing the real picture here.
Well, no. And whose job is it to make sure that we see the real picture?
That's the point. That's what they want. They want you to focus on the egg prices rather than what's going on.
They focus on the eggs while we steal the bacon.
Exactly.
Tell me about it.
Another thing before you close, like, and one of the things is that when you have media controlling the narrative, that's where you lose people.
Yeah. Well, we've got so much media going on, and we're going to have it, and they have so many different sources. It's hard to discern where the facts really are, and that's why I'm so feeling so blessed being on the air with you guys this evening, that you're really digging into what's going on and really just making it happen. So I appreciate you so much.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we hope you'll come back again down the road, because I'm sure there's going to be something else we're going to need to talk to you about.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you again for joining us tonight. We want to thank the audience for staying for our after show. And make sure you tune in again, as I said, every Saturday at 5:30 on Brick Arts Media and 2:30 on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. You can always go back and look at the shows on YouTube and Facebook. So thank you for joining us. And I said, as always, we'll see you next time.